Have you ever witnessed someone enter a public place as if they owned the world, believing that money is a free pass to ignore people, rules, and boundaries? Perhaps you've experienced this yourself, being on the other side of the counter, treated as invisible by someone who confuses power with superiority. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might surprise you more than you imagine. It was an ordinary morning at the immigration office. People waited in silence, documents in hand, faces tense, each carrying their own story, their own fear, their own hope, until the doors burst open. Attention shifted. The atmosphere changed. A man entered with firm, hurried steps, as if that environment wasn't made for him to wait. A billionaire. This was evident not only in his impeccable suit, the expensive watch gleaming on his wrist, or the latest generation cell phone pressed to his ear, but in his posture, in the way he occupied the space, as if everyone there needed to get out of his way. He doesn't look around to understand where he is. He doesn't observe the people sitting down. He doesn't respect the queue. He simply moves forward. His expression is one of impatience, almost irritation, as if that public office were an inconvenient obstacle between him and what he wants. His tone of voice is loud enough to be heard, firm enough not to be questioned. For him, time is money, and his money, in his mind, is worth more than anyone else's time there. Employees try to explain the procedure but are interrupted. He doesn't ask for information, he demands solutions. Every sentence carries the certainty that his social position should automatically open doors. It's the kind of attitude that many people recognize from afar, the silent belief that rules exist for others. Have you ever experienced this? Have you ever seen someone treat workers, attendants, or public servants as if they were inferior simply because they are there to serve? While he talks, gestures, and complains, almost no one notices the woman sitting a few meters ahead. A black woman, discreet, with a calm posture and attentive gaze. She doesn't impose herself, doesn't announce herself, doesn't raise her voice. She's there like anyone else, observing everything in silence. To the billionaire, she simply doesn't exist. He walks past her, talks over her, acts as if her presence were irrelevant. And perhaps, at that moment, he truly believes it. There is something deeply unsettling about this scene, because it touches on a wound that many know well, the feeling of being ignored, underestimated, diminished by someone who feels above everything and everyone. The immigration office ceases to be just a setting and transforms into a social mirror where arrogance, prejudice, and power mix dangerously. Every harsh word, every look of contempt builds the impression that this man will go too far and that someone, at some point, will pay the price for it. The billionaire keeps moving forward, convinced that simply mentioning influence, contacts, or figures will solve everything. He doesn't realize that this place holds more than just forms and stamps. He doesn't understand that while he speaks, he's being closely watched by someone who understands exactly how the system works. What he sees is only what he wants to see. What he ignores could change everything. Stay with me, because this story is only just beginning. And the next step in this arrival, full of power and contempt, will pave the way for something he never expected to find. As this scene unfolds, perhaps something inside you is starting to bother you too, because it's not just about a billionaire in an immigration office. It's about situations that many people have experienced or witnessed, that moment when someone feels too important to respect those around them. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below about what has touched you the most so far. Have you ever been through something similar? Have you ever been ignored, underestimated, or treated with contempt by someone who thought they were superior? Your story might resonate with other people watching now. And if, in some way, this narrative has already sparked outrage, curiosity, or even a lump in your throat, liking the video is a simple yet powerful way to show that this type of content matters. Each like helps this story reach more people who also need to reflect on respect, power, and justice. It's Not just a click, it's a sign that this message deserves to go further. If you've made it this far, perhaps it's because you enjoy stories that go beyond the obvious, stories of poetic justice, social upheaval, moments when arrogance finds its limits. Subscribing to the channel is a way of saying, I want to keep hearing stories like this. That's how this community grows, with people who value narratives that provoke, move, and make you think. Your participation here is what keeps this space alive and ensures that more stories like this continue to be told. While the billionaire continues to believe he controls everything around him, something invisible to him begins to form. An ignored detail, an observant silence, a presence he never took seriously. And it is precisely there that this story begins to change direction, because sometimes the biggest mistake of those who feel powerful is underestimating those who are closer than they imagine. And the next moment will make that even clearer. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this is where the story begins to gain layers that not everyone notices at first glance. Amidst the noise of arrogance, there is a silence that speaks volumes, and it is in this silence that she is. The black woman remains seated, her posture erect, her hands resting calmly on her purse, her gaze attentive to her surroundings. There is no haste in her gestures, nor anxiety on her face. She observes, she listens, she absorbs. While the billionaire moves as if the world were being delayed because of everyone there, she seems to be exactly where she needs to be. The contrast is almost disconcerting. On one side, the voice that imposes itself, that interrupts, that demands. On the other, a presence that doesn't need to raise its voice to exist. Yet, for him, she is invisible. When he passes by her, he doesn't ask permission. When he speaks over her. When he looks through her, as if that body, that woman, had no relevance in that scene. It's a type of prejudice that doesn't shout but wounds, a silent prejudice disguised as haste, status, and false superiority. Perhaps that's precisely what makes it all so unsettling, because there's no explicit insult, there's no direct word. What exists is subtle exclusion, constant interruption, the certainty that that woman has nothing important to say. And how many times has this already happened? In offices, departments, companies, meetings, people who are ignored not because they don't know, but because they don't fit the image that someone powerful has constructed in their own mind. She remains there, serene. The billionaire complains about the delay, questions procedures, talks about lawyers, contacts, figures. At no point does he consider that this woman might have any real influence. When she tries to guide him, he cuts her off. When she opens her mouth, he keeps talking. Each gesture reinforces a dangerous mentality. That authority has an appearance, a color, the right clothes. And when it doesn't conform to this standard, it's simply not taken seriously. The surrounding atmosphere senses the tension. Employees notice. People in line notice. There are exchanged glances, held breaths, a growing discomfort that needs no announcement. Something is out of place, and yet she doesn't react. Not out of submission, but out of control. There's a huge difference between being silenced and choosing silence. And this difference begins to create an almost palpable curiosity. Who is this woman? Why does she remain so calm in the face of such disrespect? Meanwhile, the billionaire continues to make impulsive decisions, guided by a mindset shaped by money and haste. He believes that dominating the space is synonymous with winning. He doesn't realize that behind the scenes of that immigration office, there are rules, hierarchies, and hidden truths that don't bend to bank accounts. Every passing second, every interruption, every look of disdain builds an invisible but profound impact. And it is at this point that the story begins to evoke something different in the viewer. A feeling arises that there is more there than what is being shown. A silent journey unfolds. Its serenity begins to unsettle more than any direct confrontation, because too much calm, in certain contexts, is often a sign of something bigger, something that has not yet been revealed. The billionaire, overly self-assured, doesn't realize he's walking towards a breaking point. He doesn't see that the woman he insists on treating as irrelevant possesses an authority that doesn't need to be proclaimed. And while he talks, demands, and ignores, the tension grows precisely in what is left unsaid, in the silence, in the attentive gaze, in the firm posture, in everything that goes unnoticed by someone who thinks they already know everything. This is the moment when the story begins to transform, because decisions made in arrogance almost always reveal hidden truths. And when these truths come to light, the impact is usually inevitable. There is still much behind this scene, much more than the eyes can perceive now. And this tranquility, this discreet presence, begins to gain a weight that no one there expected. Before moving on, write a simple but sincere sentence in the comments. That makes sense to me. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because it is precisely here that the tension ceases to be merely silent and begins to weigh heavily in the air. The billionaire, already impatient, decides that waiting is no longer acceptable. His voice rises slightly. His body leans forward. His tone changes. He begins to demand immediate answers, as if every second in that place were a personal affront. And almost automatically his gaze returns to the black woman, not with curiosity, but with disdain. He questions why she's still there. He asks, loudly, if she actually works in that department, or if she's just taking up space. The phrase hits the room hard. Some people lower their heads, others exchange glances, unsure if anyone will intervene. Embarrassment spreads like a sudden chill. It's no longer just arrogance. It's public humiliation. And the most uncomfortable thing is realizing how this kind of scene isn't as rare as it should be. She tries to respond calmly, explaining that the procedures follow an order that everyone needs to respect. But he doesn't let her finish. He interrupts, gestures, lets out a short, mocking laugh. He says he wants to speak to someone important, someone who truly has authority. The word echoes in the space. Important. As if she weren't. As if her presence needed to be validated by another person to have any value. The looks around speak volumes. Some feel second-hand embarrassment. Some feel fear. Some feel anger, but don't know how to express it. Employees shift uncomfortably in their chairs. An awkward silence settles in after his words, as if everyone is trying to understand how far this will go. It is in this silence that the injustice becomes even more evident, because nobody says anything, and the billionaire perceives this as permission. He continues. He questions her competence. He suggests that she doesn't understand the seriousness of his case. He talks about money, influence, decisions that can change lives, as if only his life mattered. Each sentence is an attempt to diminish, to put someone in a place he believes to be inferior. It's the kind of behavior that reveals a mentality shaped by privilege, where empathy doesn't enter the equation. She remains firm. She doesn't back down. She doesn't get upset. But the emotional impact of that moment is real, because being humiliated in public doesn't leave visible marks, but it creates deep internal cracks. And yet, there's something different in the way she holds her gaze, how she maintains her posture. It's not weakness, it's control. It's someone who understands exactly the weight of her own decisions and carefully chooses when and how to act. The atmosphere feels tense. Everyone there senses that something is about to happen, even without knowing what. The billionaire, convinced he won the argument, crosses his arms, waiting for someone to appear and solve everything. He believes you've just proven your point, but without realizing it, you've just crossed an invisible line, and crossed lines often bring consequences. This is the most difficult point of the journey, the moment when the story ceases to be merely observed and begins to be felt. Indignation grows because no one there is unaware of what has just happened. The humiliation was clear, public, unnecessary, and paradoxically, it was precisely this attitude that began to move pieces behind the scenes. Because there are decisions that, when made arrogantly, pave the way for revelations that change everything. The black woman takes a deep breath. The silence that follows is not one of defeat, but of preparation. Something begins to reorganize itself in that space. A hidden truth approaches the surface, and without even realizing it, the billionaire has just begun a transformation that was not in his plans. The impact of this moment will still unfold, and the tension is now not just in the air, it is about to take shape. Before moving on, write a word in the comments that represents how you felt just now. Injustice. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject because it is precisely here that the story takes on a new dimension. What was once tension begins to transform into something difficult to explain, almost as if the environment were reorganizing itself from within. After the public humiliation, the silence that settles in is not empty. It carries weight, expectation, a strange feeling that something important is about to happen. The black woman remains in the same place, but now her presence seems greater, not because she did something different, but because the context has changed. An employee approaches cautiously, speaking softly, calling her by name. It's not just any tone. There's respect there. There's attention. He asks if he can speak with her for a moment. The billionaire observes from afar, still confident, still believing that everything revolves around him. For him, this is just another irrelevant detail, a delay, an administrative error. But, little by little, things begin to move behind the scenes. She stands up calmly. She adjusts her coat, picks up her bag, takes a few steps. Nothing dramatic, nothing theatrical. Yet, the atmosphere changes. People notice, eyes follow. The employee refers to her by her title naturally, as if she doesn't need to announce anything because everyone there already knows. Director. The word isn't spoken aloud to the audience, but it echoes in the space almost physically, and in that instant, the hidden truth begins to emerge. The billionaire takes a few seconds to process. First comes confusion, then doubt. His body, previously relaxed, stiffens. His arms uncross, his face loses color. He tries to fit the information into his internal logic, but something doesn't add up. That woman he ignored, interrupted, disrespected, doesn't correspond to the image he has constructed of power and authority. And it is precisely there that the transformation happens. Someone mentions the full title, Director of the Immigration Agency. There's no exaggerated suspense, no solemn announcement. The revelation happens in the simplest way possible, as the truth usually does, and that makes it all the more impactful. The atmosphere reacts almost in unison, a restrained murmur, a collective sigh. Eyes that were previously downcast now lift. The silence changes meaning. Now it weighs on a different side. The billionaire tries to say something. He opens his mouth, closes it. His once loud tone of voice now falters. He rehearses a sentence, but his confidence has evaporated. The power he believed he possessed begins to show itself as fragile, dependent on the ignorance of others. And, at that moment, he understands, perhaps for the first time, that his decisions have placed him exactly where he didn't want to be. She returns to the center of the room with the same serenity as before. There is no vengeful smile, no arrogant reply. Just posture, just presence. The now visible name tag confirms what many already suspected, but no one was certain of. Director. The word takes shape, gains weight, and everything that happened minutes before begins to be reinterpreted in a new light. Each interruption, each disdain, each humiliation returns like a mirror. The billionaire lowers his tone. He apologizes haltingly, trying to compose himself. His mindset short-circuits, because money doesn't solve this, influence doesn't solve this, contacts don't solve this. What stands before him is real authority, built on experience, decisions, and responsibility. And the impact of this revelation is immediate. not only for him, but for everyone watching the scene. There's an almost physical feeling of relief in the air, as if the scales have been readjusted. Poetic justice doesn't come with shouts, nor with explicit reverse humiliation. It comes with coherence, with the simple fact that the truth comes out. Now everything makes sense. Her calmness, the silence, the choice not to react sooner. It was all part of a journey being built behind the scenes, while he lost himself in his own arrogance. She speaks now with assumed authority, but without changing her tone. She explains the procedures. She reinforces that no one is above the rules. That respect is essential, regardless of who is on the other side of the counter. There are no personal attacks, there is no revenge, and that, perhaps, is the most disconcerting thing of all. Because true strength doesn't need to impose itself, it simply sustains itself. The billionaire listens, truly, not because he wants to, but because he needs to. The expression on his face reveals a profound inner shock, a forced reconfiguration of his mindset. He realizes that his decisions have led him to this point, and that now there is no going back. The transformation is not merely external, it happens within, silent, uncomfortable, inevitable. The atmosphere begins to breathe again, but nothing is as it was before. Something has been revealed, something has been learned, and this revelation doesn't end at that moment. It continues to reverberate. Because stories like this aren't just about who makes mistakes or who wins. They're about the impact our choices have when we think no one is watching. And sometimes the greatest authority lies precisely where we least expect it. Before moving on, write a simple but true sentence in the comments. Now everything makes sense. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because it is precisely after the revelation that the story begins to teach what truly matters. The billionaire, now silent, realizes that there is no possible shortcut. All the haste, all the arrogance, all the certainty that money could buy priority crumble before something he doesn't control. The process. He needs to sit down, organize the documents, wait like anyone else. There are no exceptions. There are no privileges. There is only the normal path that has always been there, waiting for those who thought they could bypass it. The apology comes, but not with the same confident manner as before. The words are measured, almost insecure, not because someone forced him, but because the situation demands it. Swallowing one's pride is never easy, especially for someone who built their life believing that financial power solves everything. The expression on his face reveals a discomfort that goes beyond the moment. It's the discomfort of facing a truth that has been hidden for too long. Money can open doors, but it doesn't buy dignity. The woman remains firm, professional. There is no explicit reverse humiliation, no irony, no need to prove anything. She conducts the consultation with clarity, respect, and neutrality. This posture in itself carries a silent strength. Because dignity doesn't need applause, it stands on its own. And it is in this contrast that the story's message takes shape. While he loses his footing, she maintains her stability. While he learns through pain, she remains aware of who she is. The atmosphere is silent. People who once felt small now witness a reversal that doesn't seek revenge, but rather teaches. The billionaire's journey takes a significant turn. It's not just a public mistake, but an internal decision that will have an impact going forward. The mentality that puts people in boxes, that judges by appearance, that associates authority with a specific standard, begins to be questioned. And this questioning is profound, because this story was never just about immigration, nor about a public office. It speaks of everyday choices, of subtle prejudices, of how seemingly small decisions build big consequences. It speaks of invisible backstage life, where trajectories are formed far from the spotlight. It speaks of transformation, not the kind that happens in pretty speeches, but the kind that is born when someone is forced to reconsider who they believe themselves to be. The black woman continues her work as she always has. She doesn't need to raise any flags at that moment, because her very presence is already an affirmation. She represents all the people who have been underestimated, ignored or silenced, but who have continued to walk with dignity. She is living proof that real authority is not imposed by noise, but by consistency, and that leaves a deep mark on those who witness the scene. The billionaire, in turn, leaves different from how he entered. Not more powerful, not more confident, but more aware. The impact of this experience doesn't end there. He carries a revelation that goes beyond embarrassment, that respect is not demanded, it is practiced, and that judging someone by their appearance not only hurts the other person, but limits the one who judges. This is the lesson that resonates, even when the space begins to return to routine. Nothing there was exaggerated, nothing was theatrical, and perhaps that's precisely what makes it all so powerful. Poetic justice didn't come in the form of revenge, but of coherence. The natural order of things was restored. Each person occupied the place they always had, but which isn't always visible at first glance, and this understanding opens space for broader reflections that don't fit only within that room. Because stories like this don't end when people leave. They continue within those who witness them, those who listen, those who recognize themselves in them. They invite us to look inward, to rethink attitudes, to question mindsets that seem too normal. And when this kind of reflection begins, something even deeper prepares to emerge, connecting everything that has happened so far to a greater meaning. Before moving on, write a simple but meaningful sentence in the comments. Respect cannot be bought. If you've made it this far, it's because this story resonated with you on some level. Perhaps it reminded you of a situation you experienced. Perhaps it sparked silent reflection. Or perhaps it simply reinforced something you already felt, but had never put into words. If this type of narrative resonates with you, subscribing to the channel is a simple way to stay connected to these conversations that touch on real, human, and necessary themes. The idea here is to continue telling stories that leave a mark, that make you think, and that stay with you beyond the video. If you'd like, leave a comment saying you made it to the end. You could write something like, "This message was for me," or "I'm with you until the end." It's always good to know who has walked this path together. And if, throughout this video, you felt connection, indignation, or even relief, a like helps keep this content alive and reach other people who may also need to hear stories like this. There's a video over here that complements this topic and delves even deeper into this reflection. Click on it and continue reading with me there.